A prison inmate beat up Washington State Correctional Officer Jamie Biendel and then strangled her with a microphone cord in the prison chapel. She was found dead. And just like Biendel's, here are 9 more, written by prisoners. In July 2020, a 21-year-old former corrections officer is working alone and is responsible for 64 inmates. She was allegedly attacked by an inmate who grabbed her from behind and beat her with a knife. At Elaine Hunt Correctional Center, 29-year-old Eric DeHart was already serving 30 years for armed robbery and an extra 5 years for burglary. On July 17, 2020, he was charged again, this time for aggravated assault, after Correctional Officer Deshunta Miller accused him of assault. DeHart was facing life in prison without the chance to get out if he was found guilty. After Deshunta Miller sued the Louisiana Department of Corrections, LDOC, she said that broken equipment, like broken cell locks and a broken beeper, made it impossible for her to stop the attack or tell others about it. The worst part was that all the safety measures that should have been in place to protect Miller that day didn't work. Even though the prison security camera caught most of the attack, showing DeHart forcing Miller into a violent attack while she had no one to help her and no way to stop it, the LDOC argued that her injury should have been handled through workers' compensation instead of civil litigation when she sued the department. Due to the fact that DeHart was already in jail at the time of the horrible attack, he wasn't charged with assault. Miller was later fired for allegedly having an intimate relationship with another prisoner. She was also charged with official malfeasance, which is a serious crime for bad behavior by a public official that caused outrage and made people wonder how the case was handled and if the right steps were taken during the investigation. Even though the accusation was very serious, the police decided there wasn't enough evidence to press charges against DeHart. People would talk about how vulnerable correctional officers are, especially women, in places where they could be abused or forced to do things they don't want to. It also showed how complicated power relationships can be in prisons, where the line between consent and coercion is often not clear. Now Miller has to deal with the legal consequences of what she did. It's not clear what will happen with DeHart because of the unresolved accusation, but it does bring up bigger questions about justice, accountability, and how correctional officers are treated in the prison system as a whole. Jessica de la Cruz sued the city in Bronx Supreme Court, asking for money to cover damages and emotional pain. Why? Well, she had a bad experience with a prisoner that could have been avoided if the prison staff had paid attention to her. Jessica de la Cruz, who used to work as a corrections officer at Rikers Island, gets into a dangerous situation late at night. On November 12, 2021, de la Cruz, who was 40 years old at the time, met Michael Cleaver, an inmate who had just been arrested for burglary, harassment, and menacing. This meeting would change de la Cruz's life forever. The terrible thing took place just after 2 a.m. The 210-pound Cleaver, who was 5 feet 6 inches tall, grabbed her upper body and breasts hard. With lightning speed, de la Cruz pushed Cleaver back into his cell and locked the door. Even though she called her boss, no one came to help her. De la Cruz tried to handle things on her own after closing the clinic for her own safety. But Cleaver wasn't done. He tried to get away again by pushing against the door like a football player and attacking her again with all his might. She fought him off with her strength and some pepper spray, while the nurses ran away in fear. De la Cruz had to defend herself since her partner had been moved and wasn't there to help her. When the male officer finally shows up, Cleaver has already pushed him aside and lunged at de la Cruz again. Even though she's not very tall, she keeps him away until real help arrives. After the attack, De La Cruz was shocked and crying from both the damage and the pepper spray. The next thing that happened was a scary encounter with an assistant deputy warden. Instead of making them feel better, he laughed while watching security footage of the whole thing and making fun of the nurses who were running away. He made things worse by telling her not to tell her husband, which made her feel confused and down. A few hours later, Cleaver is accused of trying to attack a 51-year-old nurse. De La Cruz thinks that this crime could have been avoided if Cleaver's first attack had been taken seriously by her bosses. De La Cruz was angry about what happened because she knew that if her attack had been dealt with properly, Cleaver would have been restrained and the attempted assault might not have happened. De La Cruz is now suing the city for damages and emotional distress. She hopes that the case will change how female police officers are protected and helped after such traumatic events. In 2014, Rachel DeStefano, a correctional officer at California's Kern Valley State Prison, was working in a housing unit when she got stuck with a dangerous inmate who scared her to death. The attack not only hurt DeStefano deeply, but it also showed that there were major problems with how safety was managed for correctional officers, especially for the women who worked here. It really brought to light a big problem in the prison system, that she was left alone in a dangerous place and that her communication tools had stopped working. After that, DeStefano went to court against the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation, CDCR, to hold them responsible for not having enough staff and broken safety equipment, which made her vulnerable. Correctional staff face a lot of risks, especially when they work with dangerous inmates, as this lawsuit makes clear. People talked more about how important it is to have better training, staffing ratios, and reliable emergency communications after this case. Because of this, there was a push for reform that aimed to improve safety protocols in order to maybe stop similar incidents from happening again. This would make sure that staff like DeStefano would be safer while doing their jobs in the prison. As a correctional officer at Denver County Jail in 2015, Paula Purdy went through a lot of scary situations at the hands of both inmates and co-workers. She then made a choice that hurt not only herself, but probably her family as well. As early as 1994, not long after starting to work at the jail, Purdy had to deal with a hostile workplace where male co-workers made rude and inappropriate comments about her body. She said she told her bosses about the behavior, but that they didn't do much about it. "I would get emotional at work several times a day," she shared. One male captain made her feel so bad that she tried to stay away from him. Not her co-workers, though. The worst harassment came from inmates. As Purdy went from housing area to housing area, she was often the target of rude comments and sexual acts, like inmates masturbating in front of her. Again, Purdy told her bosses about the disturbing behavior. But at that time, little or nothing was done to fix it. The harassment got worse over time, and the fact that nothing was done to stop it had a big effect on her mental and emotional health. It was hard for her to keep going at work because of the stress and trauma of the ongoing abuse. Purdy's fears didn't stop when she left the prison walls. They spread outside as well. The constant harassment by other prisoners made her worry about her safety in public, especially the thought of running into one of these men outside the facility. Because she was a single mom, she felt stuck at work and couldn't quit because she needed to make money to support her family. She told him, "You can't just up and quit." But in 2015, after years of being abused at work with no changes that made a difference, Purdy made the hard choice to retire early at age 55. This meant she would get less money from her pension, but she felt she had to make that sacrifice in order to leave the toxic workplace she had become. It was 10 years ago that the female officer was in charge of 2 levels that can hold up to 130 prisoners when one of them pushed her into a closet, attacked her, and beat her badly. The victim was an inmate at the Patuxent Institution in Jessup, Maryland, and the attack and sexual assault happened while she was on duty. The female correctional officer's name was never mentioned because she felt ashamed of what happened. The Maryland Department of Corrections says the incident happened early Friday morning while prisoners were moving around normally. The inmate forced the female officer into a closet while she was walking him to his kitchen duty. There, he sexually assaulted her and beat her badly. The officer was locked in this wardrobe for more than 2 hours before someone else on staff found her. After being beaten, she was taken to the nearby hospital for medical care. Since then, she has been able to figure out which inmate did it. Because of this worrying event, the department is now reviewing its policies and staffing levels, especially when it comes to keeping an eye on high-risk prisoners. At the time of the attack, the officer was in charge of 2 parts of the prison that had more than 130 prisoners each. At this point, the department says that this kind of behavior is caused by a lack of staff, but that's only a basic explanation that even the prison officials deny as they continue to look into what happened. Based on the results of the investigation, the department said they were thinking about taking legal action against the prisoner. At the same time, they've admitted that better safety measures are needed to stop similar events from happening again. Because of this event, the department is now working hard to improve both the safety of correctional staff and the supervision of prisoners. Hobbs says that she was harassed every day at work as a corrections officer. Jones sexually abused prisoners while driving them from jail cells to courtrooms. Longtime female employees of the Cook County Jail quit in 2019 after years of being sexually harassed by inmates. Denise Hobbs was the first. Male inmates would often start harassing her as soon as her shift began, exposing themselves to her in a sexual and violent way. Over the course of 12 years as a prison guard, Hobbs said this kind of behavior became normal. The conditions at work got worse, Hobbs said. It became normal for people to show inappropriate body parts and masturbate in public. Even though she complained a lot, no one paid any attention to her. They once told her they couldn't help her because a prisoner was locked up in his cell. Someone in charge told her it was a compliment another time. What Hobbs went through wasn't unique to her. Along with her was Esther Jones, a sworn constable sheriff who was also regularly snubbed by other prisoners. It was like hell for Esther to work. I feel like I've lost my humanity. It made me a whole new person. It scared me to do my job, and I no longer felt safe or supported. The stress of having to deal with this kind of behavior and the lack of support from management were big reasons why they decided to quit their jobs. Both women, along with other female prison guards, joined this large movement to fight back against these conditions. They were involved in class action lawsuits that said Cook County Jail did not protect its workers from the sexual harassment they had to deal with every day. The lawsuit brought to light how badly the prison system dealt with complaints, especially when it came to protecting the health and safety of female officers. As the case gained serious momentum, more than 1,000 jail employees who were seeking justice for the hostile work environment they had been through joined the lawsuit. The court issued an injunction that told the jail it had to improve safety measures for its employees. This is a big step towards making correctional officers safer. On the other hand, getting justice wasn't easy. Later, an appeals court said the lawsuit couldn't go forward as a class action because the harassment levels in different parts of the jail were different. That decision showed how hard it is to deal with harassment at work in such a big company. This led to more legal discussions about how to handle these cases and make people's lives better, like Denise Hobbs and Esther Jones, a female guard who did not want to be named, has now come forward to say that she was raped by a terrorist at Gilboa while commanders did nothing. After being treated badly by other prisoners for a long time, with no help from the authorities, Yael did something that most people couldn't. But the fight she started was one she did by herself. When Yael was an IDF soldier stationed at Gilboa prison, she had no idea that her service would turn into a nightmare. It is well known that Gilboa holds both criminal and security prisoners. That is until Yael's life took a scary turn in this security wing. At first, she worked in a criminal wing, but sometimes her job put her in touch with Mohammed Attallah, a Palestinian terrorist who is serving a life sentence. The staff at Attallah's prison actually did what he said because he had so much power over it. Seeing Yael, he started to talk about her in a sexual way and asked, "When are you coming to work for me?" When she was sent to the wing, he was in charge of more often. His unwanted advances got worse. Even though she was uncomfortable, the authorities didn't listen to her. Yael did what many victims are told to do. She spoke out. She told her shift commander about the harassment and even filled out a formal complaint form. But instead of getting help, she was told not to speak up. Instead of taking action, the intelligence officer who should have instead focused on hiring another female guard for that wing. Yael could see that her safety and well-being were not important. Now, Attallah's eventual move to a different prison didn't make Yael's pain any better. Though she hoped that her complaint would make someone answer, it was just thrown out. Now, the prosecutor's office was looking into charges against Attallah, but the prison staff, who let the abuse happen, didn't get much in return. The intelligence officer only got in trouble, which was not nearly the justice Yael deserved. Even though it was suggested that he wasn't fit to serve, he was just moved to a different job within the prison system. Yael was alone because she had to deal with the aftermath on her own. The prison system, her co-workers, and even the media didn't seem to care about her problems. In a crowdfunding appeal, Yael talked about how painful it was for her to be in a prison that wasn't run by the police, but by a terrorist who could harass female guards without fear of getting caught. She showed that Gilboa prison, like many others, had a broken system that let her be abused because of greed, fear, and a lack of accountability. Yael's fight for justice goes on, but she has to do it all by herself, without the institutional support she should have gotten from the very group that was supposed to protect her. Inmate Omar Best filled out the criminal complaint form Thursday afternoon, just minutes after being charged with rape and assault. The form was very harsh and scary for the person who said they were the victim. Police say that Best came into her housing office at Rockview State Prison on July 25th to empty her trash can. Instead, he attacked her out of the blue. It's not time for you to hear about the woman who worked at Rockview State Correctional Institution and was attacked by Omar Best, a violent inmate with a history at the state prison. The 24-year-old victim, whose name will not be released, was working in her prison office on July 25, 2013. She probably thought that the safety measures in place would keep her safe since she was working so closely with dangerous prisoners. But Best, who had been convicted of assaulting other people before, ended up by himself with her. The attack that came next was mean and never stopped. Best beat her up and beat and choked her so badly for 27 minutes that she looked like she was dead. This could have gone on even longer if not for a maintenance worker who walked into the office during the attack and stopped it, probably saving her life. Because Best had a history of violence, this horrible event made people wonder why he was even close to the area where he was left alone with a staff member. Even scarier was the fact that Best had been moved to Rockview, even though he had been convicted of other crimes, including 2 other sex assaults. Best was charged and given a sentence for his crimes after the attack, but the harm was already done. One of the worst things that happened to the prison worker was realizing that she can't trust the system that failed to protect her. This realization changed her life forever. After that, she sued the Pennsylvania Department of Corrections, saying that they were careless and let this attack happen. This shows the danger that prison staff are in, especially in places that don't protect them well enough from dangerous people like Omar Best. January 31st, 2011. A prison inmate named Byron Scherf did terrible things to Jamie Biendel, a corrections officer from Washington State. The most disturbing fact was that what happened to her could have been avoided if only someone had listened to her. When Jamie worked as a corrections officer at the Monroe Correctional Complex in Washington for almost 10 years, she did a great job. Because of how hard she worked and how professionally she did her job, she was named Officer of the Year in 2008. Biendel was known for her skills and strong work ethic, even though she was only 5 feet 3 inches and 130 pounds. She did, however, worry about her safety a lot, mostly because she was alone in the prison chapel. She kept talking about how scared she was to work alone in that chapel and how the security cameras weren't working. Sadly, nothing was done about it, which led to terrible results. Biendel's worst fears came true on January 31st, 2011. Byron Scherf, a prisoner serving a life sentence, was found to be missing during a routine count of all the prisoners. He was found near the chapel lobby, but he said he had planned to run away but changed his mind. After hours, when Biendel still hadn't turned in her gear at the end of her shift, they tried calling her but couldn't get through. Police searched for a short time before finding her dead body in the chapel. She had been strangled with a microphone cord, and attempts to bring her back to life failed. Police said she died of asphyxiation, which is a murder. Scherf had been in prison since 1997. He had a dangerous past, but in 2009, he was moved down to medium security because he was good. But we could see that was a terrible mistake. This shocked people inside and outside of prisons. In Washington, D.C., it was the first murder of a prison guard since 1979. Soon after Biendel was killed, her co-workers and people in the community were filled with grief. Many people were angry and upset because they thought that her death could have been avoided if people had listened to her many warnings. Union reps and co-workers were critical of the prison's staffing policies, especially the choice to put an officer in a position where they was alone and could be easily hurt. Although Jamie Biendel's murder led to changes in the prison system, it came at the terrible cost of her life. People remember her not only for how hard she worked, but also for how much potential she lost. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe for more content, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an upload. Drop a comment below and let me know your thoughts. I love hearing from you. Until next time, take care and stay awesome.